All right, we are going to call the St. Croix County Administration Committee meeting to order. Could we get a roll call, please?
Chair Burning,
Present?
Vice Chair Counter,
Present.
Supervisor Shirley,
Present.
Supervisor Long.
Present. Present.
Oh, there we go. We have a quorum.
Excellent. Approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or corrections, additions? Any changes, additions, corrections? Any changes, additions, or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, we will consider the minutes of the previous meeting approved. Public comment. Is there any public comment? Yep, come on up. State your name and address at the podium, please. And we ask that you try to keep it within like a 3-minute-ish time frame. Thank you.
Yes, sir, I will. Thank you. And my name is Sherry Croix. Thank you for having me speak. When considering the budget today, please take into consideration to propose enough monies to hire an experienced lawyer when it comes to the solar project approval at the PSC. An experienced lawyer. That's all I have. Thank you.
And could I ask where you're from, please?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Hudson Township.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will close that portion of the agenda. But before we go on to business items, I do want to take 1 minute. I want to take 30 seconds and just do a moment of silence for the events that have happened in the last week. I think it's important that we think of the family that's been impacted and those of us around the country that free speech was under attack, and that's not good. And so I think we should take a moment and think about the family and do a moment of silence, not only for the family, but for our country. So if you'll join me, please. Okay, on to our business items. Financial report. We'll turn it over to Dustin.
Thank you, Chair Burning. If we could go down to the Retirement Health Savings Department, I just kind of wanted to touch base a little bit on that as we get into the budget on a future agenda item. As you know, for 2025, for the first year, we started to use fund balance rather than allocating tax levy. Just kind of want to show where we're at with that. In 2023, there we go. In 2023, we had actuals, one more. The long-term sick bank payout. There we go. So in 2023, we had 186,000. 2024, we had 32,000. And then at 25, so far, we have 127,000. So it's really hard to predict, but we budgeted for fund balance. Down to the admin tax reports. We continue to be on track with our vehicle registration fees to last year and the budget. Sales tax, the June numbers came in and they were very similar to last year. And we continue to track about 2.3% above last year's numbers. So if we continue that trend, we will hit our annual budget. So far we're looking good. I know we were a little more aggressive on our budget number for this year as we were in the past. Any questions on anything in the financial reports?
Are there any questions for the finance director? Any questions for the finance director? Yeah, Supervisor Counter.
I was just looking on page 7 in the packet. Did you find it? Anyway, yeah, on the very bottom there, I just noticed it's a pretty substantial number there for in the reds, and just wanted to ensure where that is, and on the very bottom, in the report total.
So again, we pay all of our debt service out of the general fund. And so that is all hit for the full year right now. So it puts us in a hole until we get closer to the end of the year. Because we paid all of our bonds and our interest in March and then again in August.
All right, thank you.
So that number will get better and better as we get farther into the year.
That's a good thing. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for the finance director? Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Dustin. With that, we'll move on to business item number 2, resolution approving alteration of supervisory district boundary, City of Hudson from the Town of Hudson.
Christine.
Hi, Christine.
Hi. Good evening.
We got a couple of these tonight.
We have 3 of these, so just a little background on what this is, since we haven't had one in quite a while, is every 10 years after the census, the county board will adopt a 10-year supervisory district plan. And if territories are annexed from one town or city or village to another during that 10 years, then the town or city asks that the county board uses its redistricting powers to change that county board supervisory district from one to another and ward. So that's what these are all about. The first one, like you said, that it's the resolution approving alteration of a county supervisor district boundary, City of Hudson, from the Town of Hudson. There was 1.592 acres that was annexed from the Town of Hudson into the City of Hudson. The population of that is 0. And they are asking that it was part of the Town of Hudson, Ward 13, County Supervisory District 8, and they're asking that it be made part of Ward 4, County Supervisor District 7 in the City of Hudson. And then you guys will vote on this, then it will go to County Board in October.
Okay, is there a motion to bring this forward?
I'll make a motion to approve the alteration of the district, supervisory district boundary in the city of Hudson from the town of Hudson.
There's a motion, is there a second? Second by Long, discussion. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed say no. That motion is approved unanimously. Business item number 3, resolution approving alteration of supervisory district boundary, Village of Baldwin from the Town of Rush River. Our county clerk.
Thank you. Similarly, the town of, there was 42.19 acres that was annexed to the Village of Baldwin from the Town of Rush River. There's a couple different reports between the DOA and what I got from the clerk. The clerk said that there was 3 residents in that ward, whereas the DOA site says there was 0, and then there was another report that said there was 1. I think there may have been 3. One of them was of voting age. So that was that situation. But the it was part of Ward 1, County Supervisor District 16, and they are asking that the St. Croix County Board of Supervisors redistrict this to the Village of Baldwin, Ward 6, County Supervisor District 18.
I have a question before there's a motion on this. This was annexed, right, by the
Correct.
village? Okay.
Correct.
Is there a motion to bring this forward? Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Fiedler to approve resolution approving alteration of supervisory district boundary, Village of Baldwin from Town of Rush River. Is there a second? Second by Long. Discussion. Any discussion? Supervisor Counter, you're recognized.
With this particular one, because there is 3 residents, was this particular property, were those residents in ownership of the entire parcel, or are they just?
They may have been part of it, but they did sign the annexation. I think they might have been the owner of the whole parcel.
And they signed the annexation,
Yes.
so it was brought forth by them, it wasn't adverse.
Yes, correct.
I think this is where, isn't this the site the Johnson Tractor built on?
Yes.
Okay,
That gives you some context right off the interstate there.
yeah, okay.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. That motion is approved unanimously. We will move on to number 4, resolution approving alteration of supervisory district boundaries, City of New Richmond from Town of Richmond. Is there a motion to bring this one forward? Is there a motion to bring this forward?
I will move to bring to approve the alteration of supervisory district boundaries for the city of New Richmond from the town of Richmond.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Second by Fiedler. Discussion. Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. All right, so now we move on to number 5, resolution amending personnel policies, employee conduct and work rules, and information technology acceptable use. I'm going to play Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, or who is it? It's Audrey? All right, thanks, Audrey.
All right, so we have 2 policies that we're bringing forward tonight, employee conduct and work rules. The policy itself is just a lot of restructuring, reformatting to just make it easier to read and understand. And then we did add new and expanded rules, adding examples of specific behaviors, trying to reduce interpretation or subjectivity of the policy and helping demonstrate consistency and fairness in enforcement. And then the other one, IT acceptable use policy, we added a new work sim option, and then also updated our reporting procedure.
Okay, excellent. Is there a motion to bring this forward? Anybody? Bueller?
I'll move the resolution.
Okay, there's a motion by Supervisor Fiedler to approve resolution amending personnel policies, employee conduct and work rules, and information technology acceptable use. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Long. Discussion. And I was gonna put the autopilot button and call on Supervisor Counter, but I'll do that right now. Supervisor Counter, you're acknowledged.
I'm the troublemaker, huh?
Just autopilot.
So on the one that there was a lot of things on this particular one as we went through it, on the personnel policies that I read it as thoroughly as I could. It's well-written. I have a lot of comments as far as compliments on, as far as a lot of what was put together is good. There was a couple of things I did have question, but one of them particular on, you had a section in there on job abandonment of 3 days. In a case where somebody is, you don't recognize if they're not able to be contacted because they're, anything from emergency services to, arrested overseas, whatever it is. Do you have discretionary ability with that so that it isn't an automated procedure?
Yeah, in those situations, we always reach out, whether it's contacting emergency contacts or doing a welfare check. If our employees go missing, we typically would like to find them, make sure they're okay. Most of the time when that happens, it really is a job abandonment situation. They've quit. They just haven't provided any notice or informed us. So in situations where it's medical related or emergency situations, we definitely extend the rules for that.
Okay, I apologize. I always take things literally when I read it, so.
There's no apology necessary. I was just merely stating, I knew I should have just automatically called on.
Thank you.
And I want to just say that there's no disrespect intended towards Supervisor Counter. He's so thorough in reading through these. He finds things that even Gemini or Copilot can't find when I run it through there. So nice job, Supervisor Counter. Any further discussion on this motion? Supervisor Long, you're acknowledged.
Kind of a quick curiosity question. I know you added some specific examples along the way. Is there any particular motivation or reason that you felt that that was important? Or I'm just kind of curious what prompted to have more specific examples.
Yeah, and that really is, it leads into kind of the interpretation, right? So if we use words as use reasonable professional behavior, it's very broad, and we would think that it would be good enough language for a policy, right? But you have managers that interpret it differently, you have employees that interpret it differently. And so just over the course of the last 2 years, we've kind of been keeping track over employee relations issues that we've had to work through, and what are some of those things. And so that's where we got most of our examples from, is how can we be a little bit more clear and defined in what our expectations are for the employees. So.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion is approved unanimously. Number 6, resolution directing county board to reevaluate Chapter 9 of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances in 2 years. Administrator Witt, do you want to take this, or do you want me to take this?
This resolution was requested by Supervisor Burning.
Great introduction there, Mr. Administrator. So basically, the whole reason we looked at this was we went to 100,000 in population, and that jumped the nomination papers from going from 20 at 99,999. That was okay to get 20 signatures for nomination papers to 100 for 100,000. So it didn't make any sense to make that big of a jump right out of the gate. We thought the existing board and anybody that was thinking of running for the county board coming up would have a chance at easing into those 100, and then we would review it in 2 years to see where we're at. So with that, I will make a motion to approve resolution directing county board to reevaluate Chapter 9 of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances in 2 years. Is there a second to my motion? All right, second by counter. Is there any discussion? Supervisor Long, you're acknowledged.
My main question is, if we want to review this in 2 years, why is it necessary to have a formal resolution? So that's the question. Why do we need a resolution that says we're going to review this in 2 years? I would think that we could easily put that on our calendar and we can have that done in 2 years. It seems like the formality of the actual resolution really isn't necessary.
My logic behind it was, let's say all 19 supervisors are turned over. Maybe something happens with the administrator. It gives instruction to that next group to look at it because we made an exception to what state law says, which we're allowed to do, but it brings this whole point up and forces it as an issue. That was my logic behind it. And if you agree with me, tell my wife. No, I'm just kidding.
And if it wasn't reconsidered, it would remain at 50.
That's correct.
So is there a problem with that?
Well, the whole point of passing it at 50, like part of my thought process is as we grow as a county, you're representing, like it was, 10 years ago, the county supervisors were representing under 4,000 people. And now, as we grow over 100,000, you're representing more of the population, more of a higher population. With that, on a $130 million budget, it's a lot of responsibility. And I feel that you want someone who's coming into this seat, whether it's any of us sitting here or someone new, you want to know that that person is going to take it seriously, and going out and getting 100 signatures, that's a little bit of work compared to going out and walking your cul-de-sac if you live in the city. So it's just the state law has it at 100 for a reason. I thought Supervisor Counter made that point last year to make this change to get it down to the 50 as a reasonable compromise because in supervisory districts like supervisor counters and even yours, Supervisor Long, it can take a while to drive around driveway to driveway and get 100 signatures. So right now, we still have a rural setting throughout the vast majority of the geographical county, the geographic area of the county. So this was a way for us to just continually, I think we should look at it every couple of years and watch for when those population centers begin to get to a point where it's easier to get to 100. But not so easy that they don't take the job seriously. I'm not saying that that always happens, but 20 signatures is really not a lot. And we got a big responsibility sitting in these seats.
My only concern is if we jump into the 100, you're going to have some empty seats up here because you're going to dissuade people from running, especially in the rural communities. So I'm just a little concerned about the being anxious to jump from 50 to 100. And I think 50 is, for right now, is perfectly appropriate. So I guess I don't see the logic in this particular resolution, with all due respect, so.
Supervisor Fiedler?
I support the resolution, but I'd like to ask the corporate counsel a question, and it's a general one. The question would be, how much in a procedural thing like this, where we put something for consideration a couple of years out, can this board bind a future board?
As we always say, this board can't bind future boards. Typically, what we do when something is asked to be put on next year's agenda or 2 years' agenda, Administrator Witt or I just calendar it for 2 years. So you wouldn't necessarily have to have the resolution. I do think if this resolution is passed, it will need to be on the agenda to address in 2 years. Because it's saying that it's directing the county board to reevaluate. So the county board at that time to reevaluate Chapter 9. It's a little bit of, we don't typically do it this way.
I think what you're asking is, can it force them to do it? And I think the answer is the chair probably has the prerogative to say, no, that's dumb.
Yeah, and that would be my input, is that I think the admin chair 2 years from now could actually say, no, I mean, we've talked about this, or there's other circumstances. I don't think it's necessary to review it. I know 2 years ago they approved it, but I don't believe it's any longer necessary to do it. It's really just a formal reminder that we should take a look at it. Because really, what I'm reading is it's directing the staff to solicit input and reevaluate in 2 years. That's really the meat of it for me, is that we're gonna make sure to remind whoever the elected body, the admin committee at that time is, that this was an issue. Would you like to take it up again?
As a reminder, the rules that govern the Board of Supervisors indicate that the chairs of the committees fill the agenda and determine the agenda items. So really, it's a little bit contradictory to what our rules say, as our rules do indicate that the chairs of the committees decide what's on the agenda. Again, it's a reminder for us to address it in 2 years. It's not required.
Okay, with that, I'm going to end discussion and we're going to go right to the vote. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye. Aye. You said aye?
Yep.
Okay, aye. All those opposed say no. No. There's 1 no, 4 yeses. The motion is approved. We'll move on to number 7, consideration of the 2026 budget requests. I'm going to have Administrator Witt step up to the spotlight.
Yeah, I'm gonna come down here just so I can get a little more animated and flail my arms and stuff like that.
As is the usual, right?
Yeah. With the 2026 budget, all of the departments submitted their budget requests by the end of July. And so at this time of the year, I'm trying to reconcile that to get it to a balanced budget so that I can present that to you in October. So I'm wrapping that up right now, but I want to come back to all of the standing committees and get some feedback, which I'll point out at a later agenda item, some feedback that I took and made a change to the original budget. But get the feedback from you, so if there's anything you really like or really dislike, now's a great time to tell me so that I can change it before we get to the balanced budget. It's much easier at that point. So just a couple of highlight points about the budget. When I look at all of the budget requests compared to my projected revenues, I was $654,000 short of a balanced budget, which is really good. This time last year, we were 1.6 million short of a balanced budget. So 654,000, that's easy. But that does mean we still have to make some cuts. Not everything is going to be approved, but there'll be a lot less cuts than we typically have. Okay, so looking at the budgets then, and I'll go through each department fairly quickly, but again, how I read the budgets and how I recommend that you read them is start with the top line of the budget. That's the general property taxes. That's the amount that we're asking from the taxpayers to help fund this department. So the far column on the right is going to be the new request. So 988,000 was requested. If you go back 2 columns, that was last year's budget. So 955. So we're going to compare 988 to 955 and say, okay, there's $33,000 of new money asked for. I then jump down to the net wages and fringes and look at those 2 columns. 957,000 compared to 923. Okay, well, there's all of the money that's new that was requested. It's all there in wages and fringes. And then I'll look down at the operating expenses, right down towards the bottom. 36 compared to 37, flat like we'd expect because it was all in the wages and fringes. So something unique this year in the wage and fringe, and you don't necessarily see it here, but you'll see it in other spots, and I'll point that out. We have a 2.8% increase in health insurance, but my total health insurance cost for the county went down by $400,000. And so you're like, well, how does that work? So we went from 531 employees on the plan 2 years ago to 508 employees on the plan right now. So we've had a decrease in the number of people that are taking our health insurance. So there's a drop in the total cost of insurance, but the cost per person is still increasing. So you'll actually see some departments with a decreased health insurance cost, and it's because less people in that department have taken insurance or they've gone from family to single. The other thing that you'll see, and again, it may be not necessarily reflective in this particular department, but you'll see it in some other departments, is the wages really look flat, and especially in the larger departments, you're going to see this. The way the wage grid was designed with the 19 steps that we have is that people progress through the steps over the course of their career. They retire, and then we hire them back at the beginning of the wage grid, and they start moving back up. So it took a while for people to move up the wage grid. The wage grid was originally put in place in 2015 to start January 1 of 2016. So it took people a while to move up the grid. And then during COVID, we had such a hard time hiring people. We ended up starting people really not at the bottom. We were placing them higher up on the wage grid in order to get them to accept the job. We're doing better now. We're getting more applicants. We are starting most of the employees really at the very beginning part of the wage grid. So you're actually seeing wage savings the way the grid was designed to occur. People retire off at a higher rate, you bring in a new employee at a lower rate, and there's actually $1 savings associated with that turnover then. So those are the 2 really unique savings that we're seeing in the budget, which probably help contribute to that 654 instead of $1.6 million increase. All right, so moving on then to the county administrator's budget, it's up about $9,000. If you look at the net wages and fringe, it's right there. There's about $12,000 total there. So you see a small decrease in the operating expenses. If you have any questions on any of the particular departments as we go along, let me know. If there's anything unique, I'll point it out as we get to it. The unallocated, these were grants that we did for broadband. That's what that's reflective of. The self-insurance, this is our health insurance and our dental insurance. So the total cost is really very small. And we're shifting the cost from the health insurance. We're going to go from a 90-10 split with the employees to an 89-11% split and then continue that over the next 2 years. So you're going to see the cost share difference there, but otherwise it's really pretty flat compared to the prior year. Retirement health savings, as Dustin was talking about before. We're gonna leave that at the $150,000. It's really a placeholder. I mean, whatever the costs are the cost. That fund balance is still sitting at over $2 million. So this benefit is sunset. So I don't know that that 2 million will get you all the way to the sunset, but I think it's gonna get you most of the way there.
Yeah, and eventually we'll stop putting into that fund.
Well, we're not putting any fund money into it at all now. So the 150 on the revenue side is a fund balance applied. So you're just using savings account. You're using that $2 million
Okay,
that's
understood.
there. Yep. And then the expenses, whoever retires that year. We don't know that a year ahead of time, usually. The risk and property, so this is where all of our insurances come from, our property insurance, our liability insurance. That's fairly close to what it was in previous years. There's a small increase there. Workers' compensation, fairly flat. We're a self-funded work comp plan. So we have a reinsurance for really high claims, but otherwise we self-fund for all of the medical claims that we have for injuries. County board. So you're going to see about a $30,000 increase there. And if you look at the county per diems and committee per diems, you're going to see an estimated amount increase there in anticipation of the election. That is based on a full year. So I know that the new rates don't go into effect into April, but I don't like budgeting part of the year and then have a structural deficit going into the following year. So I just budgeted at a full amount for those. But that's where the increases are that you're seeing. On the county clerk, you see about a $30,000 increase in expenses there. If we look at the net wages and fringes, you can see 390 to 421, so there's about a $30,000 increase. If we look back up at health insurance, about 20,000 of it's in health insurance, which is about the difference between a single plan and a family plan. So really it's just a mixture of who had the plan in the 2025 budget and who has a plan in the 2026 budget. I will tell you that I budget conservatively, so if there's any vacancies, I always budget them at a family plan, the higher cost. And if we end up hiring somebody that takes a single, and then we end up savings. But I never want to be caught on the opposite side where the actual cost is more than the budget. Operating expenses are nearly identical to the prior year. The county clerk also has a dog fund. It's primarily passed through. It's static from year to year. And then the elections, this is every other year. So even years, you have more elections than odd years. So we budget increases for those. So you see that go up and down every single year. Human resources, you're seeing about a $25,000 increase. And we jumped out of net wages and fringes, about 15,000 of it's there. The other part is in purchase services. So Audrey has this brand new shiny software program that goes live in 2 weeks. Oh, yesterday, all right. She told me 2 weeks ago, I guess. But the new software, it's going to be used for comparables. So instead of hiring a third-party vendor to do that, when we need to update our wage grid, we'll be able to do that in-house with the new software package that we have. So that's the increase that you see there. So it had a net effect of about $10,000 on our operating expenses. All right. Yep.
I have a question, Mr. Administrator. So when we go out to do those studies, what does that cost us as a one-time dollar amount generally? What has historically that cost us to do?
It's about 45,000.
It depends. It depends if we use the same organization and if we're just updating our existing wage grid or if we're doing a full study and would go with a new vendor. So anywhere from 50 for a full analysis to 25 for a partial analysis.
And how often have we done that?
Every 3 years.
And have we done the 50 quite often or the 25 or what?
Oh, I think just the 50 in 2016 and then the 25 every 3 years after.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. All right, information technology. So we look at their general property tax line, they're up about $46,000. If we look at their net wages and fringe, it's up about 25,000. So you're gonna see the other increase in their operating expenses and software subscriptions and renewals. So from 818,836, that's the whole Microsoft, Oracle.
Is John here?
He was.
Uh-oh.
There's John.
Where's the fanfare? Can I ask you a few questions? All right, excellent. So have other counties, have you guys ever discussed with other counties bringing in help desk and remote services, RMM, tool, those kinds of tools, like to more of a central location so that other counties can save money, we can also benefit from it, and like having a more centralized.
Pooling resources and
yeah,
having
totally.
a call center.
Totally.
So my associations with all the western Wisconsin counties that I talk to the IT directors at, we all use some similar softwares, but all the smaller softwares that the help desk typically needs. So Oracle, no other counties use that.
Right. Well, that's a large
It is.
operation.
It is.
Yeah.
Our help desk software, nobody uses. Child support is a state program that has their own help desk.
Highway, everyone uses.
Highway chems.
Yep.
Yep. We don't do a lot of help with chems though, because I think they have their own help desk for that. HHS has Avatar. There's a couple counties that are using that right now. Eau Claire does, but I don't think any of the other local counties do.
So okay, so just really quick,
Yeah.
it sounds like a lot of the tech is like there's a lot of fragmented
There
tech
is.
throughout the 72 counties.
Correct.
And being that we're an offshoot of the state, I think it would behoove the state to look at that, to uniform things so that we can pool our resources. Because I think it happens all over the place, in the private sector, and I think it's time that we start taking a look at that. Now, that's not really that's kind of a question on the budget, but at the same time, it's good to know, like, everything that you just said makes sense.
Yes.
But then, now my brain's working like overtime. So thank you, John. I appreciate your guidance on
One
that.
of the most common softwares that everybody uses is the Microsoft platform. Almost every county that I've talked to uses Office 365. There's a couple out there that try using Google Docs, but most of their users would complain about it, so, yeah.
Cool.
Right?
Thank you.
And the two softwares that are most supported or endorsed by the state are the child support software and the chems with the highway department, and they are the most antiquated softwares that we use. So the state's not really a great leader on updating software. I think it's still DOS-based, the one that with the green blips for child support, because that was one of the speaking items of the legislative agenda.
All right, cool. I'm not saying have the state
Yeah.
do that. I'm saying find a way to unify it, but okay, go back to Oregon Trail then on the DOS prompt.
Yeah. We starved along the way, I think. Finance budget. So we look at theirs, they are up about $40,000. If we look at their net wages and fringes, they are up about $40,000. We can jump up and look at health insurance. It's, almost $30,000 right there. So that's where the bulk of that change is coming from. Their operating is nearly identical to the prior year. If we get down to the default budget then, so this is basically countywide state aid stuff that's coming in. So that negative general property tax, that's just redistribution of these dollars back to everybody else. So sales tax is the big thing that's in here, shared revenues from the state. So those are the things that are coming in here and then being redistributed back. So some of these are the ones that are still in flux at this point as we're trying to wrap up the final estimates and make final budget adjustments. A couple more, I guess.
Supervisor Shirley.
When does the state come with their estimated state tax or sales tax estimates for the year for us?
Yep, it came out on Monday of this week.
Okay.
Yep.
So is that pretty
This is-
similar to what you have in there? Or?
Yeah, this is still last year's number. This has not been updated
Okay.
yet. Yep. But I will update it with the number provided by the state. It's actually provided by Forward Analytics from the WCA, but that's where the number comes from. County treasurer, they have a negative amount because they have more offsetting revenues than they have expenses, so that negative is redistributed and shared back with the other departments. It's pretty flat comparable to prior years. So there's no big changes going on within that department. If we look at facilities, they've actually dropped by quite a bit, by several $100,000. It's not because of the wonderful job Taylor's doing, although he is. It's, I said he is. It's the additional rent revenues. So some of the rent revenues were included here, some of the rent revenues were included in that default. So we moved them all into Taylor's budget, and so you're seeing them here. So this is the Ag Center, which we lease to the USDA. It's the District Court Administrator here at the Government Center. It's the Department of Corrections, who's leasing. They're about 200,000 of that. I think that's it. We're not missing anyone, are we? Those are the big ones. So those are the rents coming in that we're collecting. So they all went here, so that kind of decreases revenue demand. If we look at his expenses, his net wages and fringes are down about $30,000, and the operating expenses are down about $14,000. So some of it's because of the good job he's doing.
Can we ask Taylor, like, what have you done to make a change in that? Like, is there something you're doing differently operationally? Is it, do you have a cool new laser tool or something that's helping? I don't know.
Yeah, he did do some realignment with positions over the past year. He's done a couple realignments. Yeah, so he's been working on realigning the positions, getting them in an organized manner that makes sense for his management style and how he directs the work within his team. And then the other part of it is the experience with heating and cooling cost and electrical cost with the new building expansion. So we kind of ballooned it up with an anticipation of what it was going to be, and now we're shrinking it back down based upon the experience that we're seeing. So those would be the biggest changes. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Oh, very good. And then fleet vehicles, this is just where we recoup some of the maintenance and operating costs of our fleet. And then debt service. So the debt service cost, if you look at this operating line down here, last year we were at 10.7 million. This next year in 2026, it goes up to 11.3 million. That's kind of the peak. One of the things that we do though is try to flatten that, and the property tax there. So we're trying to flatten the property tax amount. So you can see that's pretty close to what it was last year. You see an increase in the amount from our enterprise fund, from our healthcare campus, going from 500 to 750,000, and then still some additional fund balance applied on there to keep that flat. And I've been contemplating raising that to 300,000 and making this completely flat, be within $1,000 of what it was last year.
I don't know if anyone up here would oppose that.
Yeah, yeah, I didn't think you would. But.
Yep, I'd say make it so.
All right. And then one more point then, going back. So those are all the budgets that I was going to go over tonight. I will point out here, there was a question about legal services, hiring the very best legal counsel out there. So we do have $2,000 budgeted for 2026 for outside legal services. So, a little bit of a joke there. So, yeah, that's the line item though that would be affected by if you wanted to make any changes.
Supervisor Shirley?
I would say that we change that $2,000 to $500,000.
Okay.
And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's probably got to come out of like our undesignated fund or our fund balance.
Yeah, so what I would do is, because this situation, this legal situation is a one-time situation, not an ongoing thing, that's the use that you can do for unassigned fund balance. And so that'd be my recommendation here, is instead of taking it from levy and affecting programs that we deliver, we have a healthy fund balance. I would allocate the $500,000 from the unassigned fund balance. You use it, you don't use it, it's still it's still there then if you don't use it. So it doesn't have any negative impact to reserve it. It's just putting a place marker there so that we know if we do go that path and we have those costs, this is the line item that it's going to come out of.
Moving it from 2,000 to 500,000.
I think it's absorbent.
I would think a little bit less would be appropriate.
Well, I think we should have enough in there to cover and then dial it back if we need to and put it back at the end. I think that's an easier move than
Yeah.
moving more over. Corporation Counsel, I'd actually like Corporation Counsel to speak to this because we had a discussion on this, and your thoughts were 500,000 might be on the low end if we're going to hire someone that specializes in these areas. Would you speak to that really quick?
Yes. So I think it all depends how the county board decides to proceed with the intervention in the PSC. Depending on what the goal is, will determine how much you need to spend on legal services, not only private counsel to represent the county in the PSC intervention process, but also expert witnesses, if you want to rebut what expert witnesses Xcel Energy might bring forward. So those legal services could include the hiring the outside counsel, but if you need to hire a hydrologist or some type of expert that needs to do testing on the site and then go to Madison and testify, those expenses might be well above $1 million. But I don't know for sure. We haven't done an analysis. Jason Cheeseth and I just talked about what the potential expenses could be.
Is it possible for the two of you to have an analysis done by the time the committee of the whole meets in October?
Yes, I think we could put some numbers together. I can try to inquire into fellow corp counsels, which I have been doing about who they've utilized. I don't know if, private attorneys are probably not going to tell us total how much it will cost, but maybe we could get an estimate from Atolis Law. They've intervened in the PSC before. Rebecca Broker, who spoke to you, has indicated she has, so I can ask her, and I can ask Mr. Cheeseth to see whether or not he has any ideas or estimates for experts in terms of witnesses.
Yeah, they're gonna give you a broad range. I mean, they may say 100 to 500 or whatever, but I'm anticipating they're gonna give you a very broad range of what the potential could be. So what I wanted to point out for you, this is this resolution is from the last county board packet. We had unassigned general fund balance of $4,540,590. We rounded that down to 4 million to reallocate that. I left some in there in anticipation that there could be things within the budget that needed to be fixed or allocated for. So, I mean, this is one of the things that's come up, but that's where the funding would come from. So dollar amount wise, where are you guys at for consensus?
I would say what Supervisor Shirley said as a baseline.
Okay. All right. I can put that in there, Committee of the Whole and ultimately County Board. And there's really 3 more times that you'll see it. You'll see it at the Committee of the Whole. You'll see it when that comes back to the Administration Committee, and then you'll see it at the final County Board in November.
So we got 3 times to discuss this, really.
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay.
That's healthy. Okay.
You
Any
know,
other
I-
suggestions for the administrator?
Well, just kind of a question, just on this very topic. We don't know what the cost would be. We don't know if we need to do it. Granted, if we didn't need to do it, money comes back. If it's a huge cost, it's a lot of money. And there's a lot of positions that we could fill that have been requested. You're short 640,000. We're talking 500 to $1 million to spend on a lawyer to represent us in something that 9 out of 10 people have told us is absolutely locked in concrete once it gets out of here. We can spend millions. We can hire, we're a full employment plan for lawyers in St. Croix County, Minneapolis, and Milwaukee? This seems ridiculous. If we're going to spend it, if we need it, if we agree to it later that we're going to do it, then we'll agree to it, I would think, at the full board and do it. If we thought we just absolutely had a rotten JDA that we'd never got to, that we thought there was hope at the PSC, but in the meantime, this is really putting you in a jam relative to lots of other positions and lots of other, I'm looking at Bob Rohrt back there in HHS. he's going to be cutting a number of positions in substance abuse area, I think, relatively. Boy, talk about people getting excited about that. We've got hundreds of people that are reliant upon that money. And we're going to spend it on a bunch of lawyers on a lost cause? I just don't see it at all. I see maybe putting something aside and thinking about it and bringing it up again. But I'm kind of like Chairman Long. I don't think we should be putting in any baseline of $500,000. I think we should agree to take it up when it's necessary and make a reasonable decision at that time.
2 points to that. One is, since we're going to use fund balance applied rather than levy, it won't affect any of the programs that Bob Rohr's doing. Because I wouldn't ever recommend you to use one-time money for ongoing programming. So that's how come I'm trying to keep these two issues separate. This is a one-time issue, so you use one-time money for that. Ongoing stuff don't impact our ongoing stuff, like you were saying. So we are keeping those in separate buckets.
You could also effectively put it towards tax relief of $1 million for the residents of the county.
Yes.
Okay, and how about contributions from those who are affected? How about the municipalities? Are they going to chip in?
Yep. The other point then that I would have for you is procedurally for you, when you adopt the budget is adopted on a majority vote. And so if it's in the budget for $500,000 and the board says, yes, we want to do that, it's the majority that's instructing Corporation Council to do that. If you wait until 2026 and go, okay, we want to be an intervener now, okay, now we need money, the fund balance is still sitting there, yes, but now it's a budget amendment and you'll be required to have a 2/3 vote of the county board in order to allocate the money for that project. And so that's probably the biggest difference then in whether you do it now or you do it later. And that's purely up to you. That is your guys' decision. That's a policy decision. But that's probably the bigger implication of timing-wise of when you want to do it.
Supervisor Shirley.
I think having this as a bookmark for potential costs is important. I mean, nobody's saying here that we're gonna spend 500,000, Corp Council go spend all of this. I think we're gonna have a load of discussions of, as this is ongoing and when it goes, if it goes to PSC, and how that all works out and what we wanna do. I don't think it's just we're gonna budget this and they're gonna spend it. So I think, yes, we're gonna get to talk about this 3 more times in the budget process, but I think after that, it's not like another line item on the budget.
All right, so just remember that we're putting this in here and we'll have 3 times to discuss it. So everyone will be able to make their case over the next 3 meetings, whether it's county board or committee of the whole, as to whether or not this line item needs to be in there in the manner in which it's there. So is there anything else relating to the budget that any supervisor would like to speak on? Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, with that, we don't have to approve anything on that, right? That was just,
It's informational at this point. I'm gathering guidance.
thank you. Aren't you glad you brought it up?
No.
Okay, so then we'll move on to number 8, report on new positions in the 2026 budget. And I'll turn it right back over to Administrator Witt.
Yep, and you don't need to vote on this one either. This is informational at this point. What I need to do is, by our rules, is to report to you any changes that are occurring in the budget. Sort of gives you an early snapshot of where some of these changes are occurring at. So if you agreed or disagreed with them, you can give that early input and I can make the adjustments before I have to get to a balanced budget. But looking at the budget where I'm at today, I think we're pretty close on these. So I'm going to give it just one little caveat that I'm still waiting to confirm some revenue items tied to some positions, that if I don't get the revenue, I wouldn't do the positions at the rate that I'm projecting them here. But if the revenues come in, it'll be exactly how this looks at. So the first block here is mid-year changes. These are all things that they're usually position swaps. A lot of them come to the administration committee and you guys have approved them throughout the year, or they have zero budget impact. And I've just said, go ahead and swap the 2 positions and we'll report it at the budget at the end of the year. So that's what all of these at the top are occurring. Reclassifications. So one of them is the Family Court Commissioner. We anticipate that the Family Court Commissioner is probably going to retire in 2026. It hasn't been formally announced yet, but we anticipate that that's potentially going to happen in '26. So we're looking at changing that from a part-time contracted position to a full-time employee position. Our court commissioner is a full-time employee of the county, but the Family Court Commissioner was contract. It's really probably just historically how they were done when they started, but we're trying to get them on the same page and do them the same way. So with the transition, sometime in '26, we'll make that change. So that does have an increased cost for the county to do that. The other two are regrades. One's a regrade, one's a position change. I'm not recommending one at this point until the new software has time to analyze it, and the other one I am recommending. All right, new positions then. So these are new positions that are requested in the budget. So Children's Services has the first three. It's a case manager, a physical therapist, and an occupational therapist. Case manager is going to be funded through charging back of the services, so they'll be fully supported by the caseload and billing of Medicare. The physical therapists and occupational therapists are billed out right now. We think we can bring those in-house. There is an additional cost for that, but at the growth rate of those programs, that'll eventually turn over, and it'll actually flip the other way then for us. The next two positions are with the healthcare campus, the assistant healthcare campus administrator that was voted down by the county board earlier. It had a majority vote, but it didn't have the 2/3 supermajority vote for a budget amendment. So I did put that back in because it had received majority support. And then the other position is an admissions coordinator in order to review the very thick caseloads of patients when they apply to come in so that we can make sure our facility is the right facility for them. Next one is HHS administrative assistant, and it's for right next door here. There's space here to have somebody there on staff to be able to greet clients and work with the staff that's working here. They'd asked for a 0.75. I'm recommending a 0.6, so partially funding that. Behavioral health has a technician. It's partially grant funded for the next 3 years. So we have 2/3 of it and 1/3 is grant funded. I'm recommending that. The district attorney, they asked for a diversion program case management specialist. I partially funded it because I'm funding it with a diversion program case manager. So it's a lower graded position, does basically the same thing. There's just a couple extra things that the case management specialist does, but there's a couple other employees already in diversion that do that. So I don't know that they all have to do that. I think it can be more split 50-50. So partially funded in that I gave them a different position that does most of the things they asked for. The next position, Justice Support Services Court Navigator. So this was not asked for by Dr. Ghali in his budget request. It was requested in '25 and we didn't fund it. It had originally been an ARPA-funded position when we first tried it out. The judges have been asking for it, and when I did this presentation for budgeting at Public Protection Judiciary, Judge Nordstrand actually made a really compelling case for it, and I think Supervisor Fiedler had brought it up, the benefits of that court navigator position. So I am going to recommend that we do fund that position. I think it can have some downstream benefits in our court system. So I have added that position back in, even though it wasn't requested in the '26 request. On to positions eliminated. So a lot of these, well, the first one is at ADRC. That was a grant-funded part-time position that went away. We had reduced the adult, in behavioral health, there's a number of changes. And most of these were associated with the reorganization plan that Bob Rorat and his staff put together for behavioral health. So we're eliminating some positions and restructuring how that services are delivered within behavioral health. So that has quite a bit of savings for the county, especially within that division. Positions that were requested that I'm not funding in the 2026 budget, In behavioral health, they'd asked for a separate behavioral health administrator. Through that reorganization plan, they actually came up with a different solution. They're going to use the CCS and the behavioral health and remerge those two divisions. They were split about 6 or 7 years ago. We're going to remerge them, and that division administrator is going to cover both of those divisions then. So that satisfies that without having to add the position. In ADRC, they asked for a resource specialist. We just added 2 of them in 2025. So I'd really rather wait to see those positions get fully up to speed, even though it's partially funded by the state, before we add another position. And then in community development, they had asked for a full-time position and eliminated 2 FTEs worth of part-time positions. And I'm just not sold on that idea yet. It's actually more expensive to have one person that's working 2,080 hours all year long than having 4,160 hours all worked in the summer hours. So that's why I'm just not sold on that idea yet. They'd have to provide me more evidence before I went that direction. So if you look at the 5.87 positions requested, they had a net cost or total cost of $375,000. I approved 6.12 positions for a total cost of $127,000. It's like Houdini there. But it is just math, and that's how it works out too. And that's my recommendation.
Okay.
Even
any
I had to look
questions?
at that and go, that can't be right, but it is, that's real.
Any questions for the administrator? Well, you guys all have a chance to look at this until the next committee of the whole meeting where this will be discussed again, and make sure that if you have questions, bring it forward. All right, anything else on that?
No.
Okay, excellent. We will move on to number 9, discussion of amendments to rules governing St. Croix County Board of Supervisors. Corporation Counsel.
Yes, so this is just a discussion item tonight to discuss changes to the rules governing the Board of Supervisors. As previously discussed, I did change the language related to virtual attendance. That is in Article 3, Section A7. And then there's also proposed changes in Article 3D3 regarding that the county clerk read items on the consent agenda at every county board meeting, and also removed county clerk's report of correspondence. The reason we struck out the county clerk's report of correspondence is because the statutes only require that the county clerk report to the county board annually. And so she does that annually at the committee of the whole, along with all the other departments. So we did strike that, as you know, when Chair Long calls on her during county board meetings and asks if there's any county clerk's report, she usually says no. And that's because she reports to the county board annually. We can go over the, it's section 3A7, I think it's, yep, there you go. So if there's any additional changes too, we can discuss those, but those are the 3 that are identified in tracking on the document.
Yeah, Supervisor Long.
Yeah, on virtual attendance, I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought we had also talked about the importance of when somebody's attending virtually, to make sure that everyone knows if they drop off so that they're no longer attending. As I tried to do a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if it worked or not, but so
Yes,
what happened to that?
I had written down in my notes that I didn't know if there was consensus on that. There can be language added to the rules that the county clerk shall announce orally to the board when someone joins late or leaves early. And we would probably locate that in the same virtual attendance paragraph. But if you recall, we discussed, well, what about people that are present in person? Do we also have an announcement made when they come early and leave late, or come late and leave early? And so I didn't know if the county board supervisors wanted that globally, when anybody shows up late, that the county clerk announce it, when anybody leaves early, the county clerk announces it, or just in the virtual attendance section.
Yeah, and I guess I was thinking if they're physically present, they leave, then everybody knows they leave. You can see it, right? But virtually, you don't know, all of a sudden you have a vote and the total is different. And I'm like, well, okay, why is it different? Oh, somebody left. I think it would be good to at least let everybody know that if they were attending virtually, that they've left the meeting. I don't know.
But I think the other point of that, though, if you look at the flip side of it, is we may be here physically, but people that want to watch the meeting or can't be here physically for that meeting can't see that someone left either. So when their supervisor leaves, they go, well, where the heck is, who can I pick on? Oh, Supervisor Counter. Supervisor Counter's not here. Like, why wasn't his vote counted? And I think it's important to announce that. I don't know. I just was thinking about that from the flip side of our neighbors that watch from home potentially. And so the other thing is, the other thing I'd like to see on this, you good? Okay. So the other thing I think we'd like to see in here is a rule that if you are attending virtually, you must have your camera on at all times. And you don't have to have the microphone on at all times, but at least have your camera on. That way it's noted that you're paying attention to the meeting. I believe we have that in our library board for the Hudson Library, that you have to have your camera on if you are attending remotely or virtually. And then I think we also should have it where they are required to log into the back office as well, what's it called, Civic Portal or whatever, that they must, and obviously we don't put the specific name of it, but whatever, medium we're using to track our votes so that they don't have to make that amendment down the road as a board, but I think they need to be in that as well. Supervisor Shirley.
One other thing we talked about in the last meeting was if they appear, whether in person or virtually, if they come into the meeting in the midst of a discussion, they're not allowed to vote until the next discussion item starts. Because if somebody walks in the middle of a discussion, how do they make a informed vote on what we're talking about in the meeting when they missed half of it?
I think we did talk about that last meeting really quick, and I think we can't prohibit an elected official from voting on an issue that's on an agenda that they got a packet on well ahead of time. I think that was the conclusion we came to. Yeah, totally. Supervisor Fiedler.
Just for corporate counsel, I know the WCA is a model set of rules on this, and do they address this issue in their model set of rules?
There is a section on virtual attendance, however, I don't recall right now what it states, but I could send that to the administration committee after the meeting tonight. I have it on my desk. I did not bring it down here with me.
Unfortunately, I didn't bring my copy with me either. Good points have been raised all along, but I would just come at this from just the principle that like we do with voters on election day, if it's possible to count their vote or have them participate in the election process, we do it. We bend over backwards to be liberal in that respect. And I would just think that principle should apply to the county supervisors as well. As long as we are reasonably certain that it's an honest participation and there's not a fraudster out there that's saying, hey, I'm Bob or whatever, I think we should bend over backwards to do it. And I'm just not sure if when we require both audio and visual, for example, means lots of times when I'm on other kinds of conference calls, you can call in and it's acceptable in a group, but you're not on a video. Here we have audio and video. Technology sometimes fails us. And if we had a supervisor who could hear everything, who had participated, who had done their homework and wanted to vote, and for some reason their camera wasn't working, it seems like a shame to not let them participate in the process. So I just think we shouldn't be, this was a great breakthrough when we created virtual meetings to let people, for honest reasons, a couple times a year effectively, be able to participate virtually. And I just hate the idea that we start ladling on more and more rules as to what that means. Some might be appropriate, but that's why I asked about the WCA model rule.
So I'll bring up the reason why I would want to see their face at a very minimum is to see that, one, it's them, and two, they're participating. This brings up a great point that we might want to look at inside of our board rules besides this. An acceptable use policy for county supervisors, because we have usernames and passwords and for specifically voting. So therein lies somewhat of an issue of, you know, it could be me on the camera, but is it me that's actually in there voting on the issue? And so I don't know how else to word it other than we need to have something, I think, that we have that, you know, we have to stick to, that it's only us that have our username and password to access that. And maybe it's something where we have to look at Civic Portal and have the video, you know, the means of virtual attendance built into that Civic Portal, and not have a separate Teams meeting and a separate portal that they log into to vote, because you could get really in a sticky situation having two different ones. And if they gave your username and password to someone, you know, it's not you voting. You know, again, I'm not saying that has happened. Certainly not saying that. But to not protect us from that, I think would be short-sighted.
I was able to pull up the WCA rules, and it does indicate that any board member attending a board or committee meeting remotely shall keep the camera on for the entirety of their attendance if attended by video, and shall be excused from any closed session part of a meeting unless granted permission to remain. So it does indicate in the WCA model rules that keeping the camera on is important, likely for the reasons you indicated.
Anything else regarding the rules? Supervisor Counter.
I'm just gonna kick back onto the one with the county clerk's report on correspondence. The only thing that as I was reading that I had concerns is if, in the explanation was helpful, so thank you for that. But if we have correspondence that comes in for particular meetings or things that are coming up, I still think for transparency reasons, you know, and also the age of what the correspondence is and what it's about. So if we have, for the most part, there isn't, we always request and there isn't any, and that's great. Not saying anything to that, but what the issue becomes is if a subject comes up that there is something that's an important thing to pass, that we're doing this in an expedited manner that is transparent to everybody, where we're not waiting or we're getting information that's just to the board members, but we're not, it's not accessible to the public. Unless, of course, it's something that we don't want accessible because of things that are supposed to be kept confidential. I don't know, I just look for comments.
Any comments? Yes, Supervisor Fiedler.
You know, as I understand it, the clerk endorses this amendment that the county clerk need not report on correspondence. As you said, historically, over the last year or two, there hasn't been too many reports. And mostly what she would get, if she wants to send some, if it's important, she distributes it to the board members. But that goes to your point that we see it, but the rest of the world doesn't see it. It's not a bad point, but but we see it. So it's not like we're being kept from information. I think this is the minor part of this amendment. And I mean, I don't think it makes a big deal difference whether we strike it or not. I would just address the second part, and I think that, going along with my other comments, it was a big step for this board a few years ago when we went to a consent agenda to, you know, have the chair and the county administrator work very hard to identify those things that pretty much had come out with 5-0 votes or didn't require a vote. They were nominations of some kind, routine ones. And we lumped them all into a consent agenda, and we can always counsel the board chair or the administrator on things, and we all have the right to pull things, but to make the county clerk actually read and I'm just assuming it's just the title of these items, to me, it's just a waste of time and defeats the purpose of our consent agenda, that if we want something more explained, we can do it. We all get the information a week ahead of time, and I think that this is one item that we could not change by adding this suggested item.
Yeah, Supervisor Long.
So the question on this item is, what's the problem that we're trying to solve?
You're talking about the consent agenda?
Yes.
So last meeting, when in your absence, and this is not like by any means a disrespect to Vice Chair Fiedler, we went right to a first and a second on a motion that cannot be discussed. Consent agenda items are not up for discussion. But prior to that, a supervisor or any member of any board on a consent agenda can ask for an item to be pulled to be discussed separately. Well, I had to call a point of order to ask to unwind the motion in the second to then pull a subject matter off for discussion. What this does, and the city of Hudson has done it for a long time, and we're talking at least as long as I've been following this, their clerk reads the consent agenda, and then there's a pause to allow members of the city council to pull a piece of that consent agenda. So was my whole purpose of it, because last time it was not really, it ended up being proper, but I stopped something in motion, having to use a privileged motion to stop something that didn't allow for discussion once it was in place. So that's why. It takes a little bit longer, but it's gonna be done right, and we don't have to unwind things that it makes it unnecessary to do.
So the problem is making sure that supervisors have the opportunity to pull something from the consent agenda.
Yes.
And I think there's clearly a way to do that, but why would you want to read all the items in the consent agenda? I think that's excessive and a huge waste of time. I mean, all the supervisors, we all prepare, we all read through the consent agenda, we read through all those. If we want to pull something, we should be prepared to do that. So we need to be able to provide that opportunity, but there's no reason to read through all those items on the consent agenda. I just don't, that's totally illogical to me. And I'm sorry if the city of Hudson does it, but I just don't see any reason for that at all.
Supervisor Fiedler, go ahead.
Just corporate counsel or the administrator, we have a provision in the rules, it's not up on the screen now, relative to pulling things from the consent agenda. Could you pull that up? I mean, I think we have that right now, just do it. And I was just wondering how that fits into what the chair here was saying about being sure that everybody has the right to exercise their right to do that. Because I know we have the right, and that's why we ended up doing at the last meeting what we did. Supervisor Burney raised a reasonable objection to something and ultimately was pulled. It might not have been parliamentarily clean, but it occurred.
I do not know if it's specifically indicated in the rules or if it's just part of Robert's Rules of Order that indicates, consent agenda is just the streamlined process to approve numerous items at the same time.
I'm pretty sure it must be in the rules. It wouldn't be in Roberts.
So here's something that I thought about between coming up with this and tonight. What if you have a chair that has something on the consent agenda that they want it to get rammed through, and there's a couple of supervisors that also want to get it run through? Procedurally, what we did was, it was correct because the motion and the second were unwound, but it very much could be that the chair rules on no. So by stopping for a moment and pulling those or reading those items off, a supervisor can go, I'd like that pulled. I'd like that pulled, please, Mr. Chair.
And I don't have any problem giving them the opportunity, but my problem is reading all the consent agenda items. It doesn't make any sense. It's a waste of time. Give them the opportunity. You could put in a rule that says before there's going to be a motion on the consent agenda, pause and give everyone the opportunity to pull something from that and then do a motion in a second and vote on the consent agenda. But reading all the consent agenda items, for as often as this happens, it happens maybe once or twice a year. Reading through all those items just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I would say to me it makes sense, but you have your opinion on that, and that's perfectly fine. So is your suggestion that we change it to that the chair must pause and give a moment for the supervisor to be able to pull an item from the consent agenda?
They could even be a question. Does anyone have anything to pull from the consent agenda?
I'm
If
fine
not,
with
do
that.
we have a motion?
It fulfills the spirit of what I'm looking for.
Right, and I totally agree with the spirit of what you're looking for.
Okay.
I'm just trying to avoid having the county clerk read all of the consent agenda items when it rarely happens. So that just seems, and we have a lot of things on that consent agenda. That doesn't make any sense. But I want to make sure that supervisors feel comfortable that they have the opportunity to pull something from that agenda.
So I
without
think in the
running
spirit of this discussion, if we can direct Corporation Counsel to change this to fit the needs of what the spirit of what we're looking for is, I think that you bring that back to this body and I think it will get approved.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Fiedler?
Well, I'm just going to say I agree with you, and I agree with Chairman Long. I think we hit exactly what's needed. But I had just a general question, because I know you've raised this a couple of times, that you thought the rules of parliamentary procedure wouldn't permit doing what we just said would be a good idea, and that is let any supervisor pull an item. Now, I thought it was already in our rules, that we had a specific rule that said we could do that. But I don't know, had we gotten to that point where we raised it and somebody seconded it, and then, I don't know that, is there any rule that says,
There is
in a
no
con-
discussion
in a-
on consent agenda.
but where does it say that?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Robert's Rules of Order?
Does it say that in Robert's Rules of Order?
I believe so,
On a
yes.
consent agenda, there's no discussion?
Correct. We could also change the rules, because the rules are binding, and then
Right.
we fall back to the Robert's Rules of Order. So if you would like something different, as long as we put it in the rules, you follow the rules,
Well, one thing might be that you can put in our rules that on a consent agenda, there can be discussion and objection. Now, I think we've always assumed that anybody could object to anything on the consent agenda at any time once it's been placed on the agenda or at the meeting of the Board of Supervisors. So nobody objects to that. And nobody's trying to ever push anything through. And if we ever got into that situation, I would hope that the Board of Supervisors would act decisively to rebuke whoever tried to ram something through unfairly. The whole point of this was, these have all been 5-0 votes. We know of no controversy at all. We're trying to speed things up so that the audience gets home in time. We do our important business with plenty of time to do it, and we zip through those things that are deemed totally consensual. But there's a zillion ways we could get to that point where we agree. The chair of suggested one thing, I threw out another thought, and I think the direction you were given was try to come up with some good language that lets anybody object at any time to the consent agenda. I think that's the essence of it, and I totally agree to that.
I don't know if I ask if there's any further discussion. No, I'm just teasing. Is there any further discussion on the board rules? Are there any other suggestions while we have this subject matter open? Any other suggestions, comments, ideas? And I'll go one last call for anything else on this business item. Hearing none, we will close that and we'll go to requests for future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda items? Any requests for future agenda items? Any requests for future agenda items, if I can talk? All right, closing that, going on to announcements. Anyone have any announcements? Any announcements? Any announcements? All right, seeing none, we will set the date for the next meeting to be October 21st, 2025. And being that all business items have been concluded, we consider this adjourned at 6:24.